As a 23-year-old adult right now, I just want to say to my 14 to 17-year-old self is that I'm really proud of you for becoming a Christian teenager that you've become in your high school days and following the Lord every single day, just like you are supposed to. But I just want to say you made it. You did it. And I'm very proud of you for graduating high school. So, way to go.
I am just going to give you a little bit of perspective on the relationship between parenting and being a kid as a sort of in between currently 23-year-old adult and what I would tell my 17 or 14-year-old self looking back on things now. So, first off, I'll start by saying any kid who's struggling with their parents, I would say the number one thing to remember is that your parents love you very much and they want the best for you, and their rules and their policies are probably based in an experience that they had. They're older than you and they know or have experienced a lot more than you have had the opportunity to, and everything that they do is really aimed at your benefit.
Hello, BCC. I hope you're having a fantastic Sunday morning. I have been asked to respond to a few questions pertaining to our youth and our parents. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive right in and answer those questions one by one. When you're young, a lot of times you only see what you see in that moment, right? It can be very difficult to kind of think about the future and to think beyond the place and the time that you're in that moment. And a lot of times what parents do is they're able to see the future, right? And they're really able to process through how the actions of their children today could potentially impact their future. For our youth, you're surrounded by technology and social media and a lot of things that can be very unhealthy. And so, I do think it's necessary for parents to have those rules in place. I do think it's necessary for parents to have boundaries. I think it's necessary for parents to say no sometimes, because part of their role is to shepherd you and discipline you. And something else, the Bible says that the Lord chastises those he loves, right? And similarly, if your parents love you, they will discipline you. They will chastise you. They will protect you. They will have boundaries. They will say no sometimes. It's not because they don't like you. It's not because they don't want you to have fun, but it's because part of their role, part of their God-given role as your parent is to really shield you, protect you, and keep you safe. On the flip side, though, sometimes I do think that parents can be maybe a little too strict. And that's where, if you are a parent, I think you have to be able to trust your child, right? And you have to be able to trust the Holy Spirit in your child and say, hey, I have taught you things. I have prayed over you. I have taught you what is right and what is wrong. And now I trust that you can make decisions that are healthy, decisions that are God-centered, and decisions that will bring glory to the Lord. So I think there has to be a balance, of discipline and trust. Then something else for our parents, the Bible says that we do not have a spirit of fear or timidity, but we have a spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. And I think sometimes it can be very easy to parent from a place of fear and from a place of timidity of, oh, I'm not going to let my kid do anything because I'm so afraid that if I let them do anything, they're just going to go off the deep end, right? But actually, the Bible tells us that no, you have power, you have love, and you have a sound mind. And so when you begin to parent from a place of power, you're actually able to not be too strict, and you're able to have rules, but also give your children freedom.
Okay, question one. My parents were very strict. There were lots of rules. And as a teenager, I thought they were ridiculous. as an adult. I don't necessarily completely agree with them, but I kind of understand their intent. Like, I think my parents were really just trying to like minimize the number of like detrimental mistakes I would make. I think part of that is because I have always been incredibly strong-willed and like adventurous, and so I think when I was really little, my parents were like, okay, we've got the work cut out for us here. But I think where it maybe like didn't land with me as a teenager was that I felt like I couldn't make any decisions. Like, the rules were put in place, then the decisions were made for me. So it was like, well, my friends would be like, well, can you hang out tonight? And be like, well, it's a school night, so no. As opposed to, can you hang out tonight? Well, my decision-making process would be like, how much homework do I have? Do I need to like make it to a sports practice? Like, what time would I need to be home by? Do I have a curfew? Like, I think that those kinds of decisions would have been helpful to be able to kind of like be a part of making. But I also know that I wouldn't have made them correctly every time, and I think that's what my parents were trying to like mitigate, I guess. But yeah, I think like as a kid, I just wanted more like autonomy. Which as an adult, I'm like, I don't know that I needed it. But in the moment, it was like everything. It was everything to be able to like make a decision for myself. So I think that like the repercussions of that were that like I was very, I was just held to like a lane as a middle school and high schooler. And then when I went to college, I could make my own decisions, and I like didn't have to be home at a certain time, and I kind of rolled with that for a year or two, and it may have been a little bit less whiplash if I would have had a little bit more autonomy to like be a part of the decision-making process in like high school.
What's going on, BCC? This is Javen White. First question I want to talk about basically, why are my parents so strict? Have so many rules, or kept me from missing out on things. For me, that really wasn't the case. Anybody who knows my mom, Kelly Lewis, is all up in your business 24/7. So that was always happening regardless. And for me, it wasn't necessarily why are they so strict, but I think it was more of they were trying to look out for me and always have my best interest in mind and know what my goals were for the next couple of years coming out of high school, and the dreams and things I wanted to accomplish. They kind of try to set a path for me and keep me going in the right direction towards the things that I wanted to accomplish. So I never really looked at it as them being too strict, but kind of more of them always just having my back. Something I would say is probably just having a balance of allowing, teenagers at that age to kind of find who they are and stuff with their group of friends and things, but also being able to keep them in situations that are going to allow them to succeed as teenagers, growing into who they're going to be as an adult, which is really kind of something more that happens in college. But it's always good to, kind of find that balance as well, because you don't want to just, be off in college or be out of high school and be on your own. It's kind of just like a culture shock in certain aspects. So that's just something I would kind of say is finding that balance and finding opportunities to kind of branch out and, meet friends and be in social situations and kind of allow them to make choices for themselves. I can still be kind of not monitored, but, kind of just allow them to experience different things and stuff like that. So it's kind of, that'd be the biggest thing I could think of growing up with friends, is just finding that balance and opportunities to kind of, find who they are.
All right, so youth want to know, why are your parents so strict? Why don't they trust you? Why do they want you to miss out on all of these things? And Basically, I would say to that is that although you may think that your parents are being strict, they are making decisions for you that they feel like is in your best interest. A lot of times it doesn't have anything to do with trusting you, actually. But I definitely think that it's worth having the conversation with your parent, and making sure that you've shown them that you are responsible and that you will make sure that you're also making decisions in your best interest. Now, that being said, for parents, right, I know that parents, you have safety concerns, but you also can't have it both ways. And what I mean by that is that for parents who are strict, you can't say that you trust your kid, or you can't say that, I've raised them to be this type of person, a responsible young adult, and things like that, but then not give them the opportunity to show that, right? So you have to also give them the space to be able to prove to you that you've done the job that you said that you've done, and that you've instilled the values in them that you want them to have, and know that when they go out, they're a representation of you and your family, and then they're not going to do anything to jeopardize that. So I definitely say for parents who are too strict, ease up a little bit, right? Give your child the opportunity to show you that they deserve to have a little bit more flexibility. Now, that being said, I also don't want you to be too loose, right? I think being too loose is not good either, because then kids get the sense that you don't care what they do and things like that. I think for me, my parents had a good balance of, they weren't too strict and they weren't too lenient. They were a good mix in the middle. And I think one of the things that they did was that they did allow me to go do things with my friends, but they did want to know, where was I going to be, who was I going with, and I did have a curfew, right? So they'd be like, okay, and primarily that was because they wanted to know, in case something happened, they would know where I was. They would know, who they could speak with in case something happened and things like that. And so I think primarily it comes up with safety concerns, but it may be translated into other things. And so I think it's very clear to make sure that you're communicating with your child, why you feel like they shouldn't go, or things like that. And for kids, also communicate that you've taken the measures to make sure that you're doing things safely. So communication is key, but also trusting each other, giving each other a little bit of grace, right? And understanding where the other party is coming from, I think is important too.
Like, really the only thing I can say now is, to me, it's kind of cliche to all you hear from everybody, they're doing it to protect you. Like they know what's best. You have so much to learn. They're like, there's just so many different things you hear. And at the time, now, if I were to say anything to myself, I feel like I can't even say anything, because it would go in one ear and out the other. Because just at that age, you just don't want to hear that. And so actually what I would say is there's a reason you hear the same things over and over and over, from all people that are usually adults and experience things and that go against what you're thinking at the time. And it's the only thing that you can say, and I would say to myself, is you don't know what you don't know. Your parents are in the position to make that experience the most long-term beneficial and for you. Your parents love you. You should know that, and you have to trust and have faith almost in them that you coming out on the other end it's going to be beneficial for you, and there is reasons for it, even that you don't know. And that's the same thing that we kind of, as Christians, walk in our walk with Christ. We take steps without always knowing all the answers, or being able to see God or whatever, all those types of things. Like, that is what faith is being able to take action and know that you may not know, but still have faith to continue and press on. So I don't know if that directly, yes, it's going to feel strict. It's going to feel like there's lots of rules. It feels like you're going to be missing out, but simply put, it's you just stay the course. Just stay the course. There's so much ahead of you, it's definitely something that your parents probably have the best perspective on, and need to have oversight over. So that would be the answers to those questions. Like I said, it kind of goes all back to that first question. It's hard for me to say these things to my younger self because I know what I was thinking then, and it would go in one ear, out the other. Didn't matter if it was pastor saying it, my dad saying it, an uncle saying it, someone I actually looked up to that was just a little bit older, or even, I mean, it just didn't matter. Like, you're just so stuck in what your teenage years, at least for me, I was so stuck in my present. It was hard to have perspective on anything else, and that's the biggest thing that I would like try to shift someone in that age group's mind towards, is that there's so much ahead that you have no idea, and your parents, and those that look out for you and love you are the ones that can have the experience to know what's ahead, and they're only looking out for what's ahead, and you only have the perspective, and everything around your life is so like at the moment that you have no idea what's in store ahead, and that they're just trying to set you up for your future.
Okay, you guys, so here's the thing, right? If you are a young person and you still live at home with your parents, this is probably the most amount of time that you're ever going to spend with them, potentially for the rest of your life, So, I mean, just really like soak it all in, like learn all you can learn from them. Learn how to pray, learn how to, learn how to cook.
But for me, it was really important that I had the opportunity to spend little quiet moments with my family, whether that was just, having dinner together, like I mentioned before, or we started a tradition where we would always watch Jeopardy after dinner, right? And we'd guess, okay, how many do you have today? Like, okay, I think I'm gonna get 5, and things like that. But just having that time to be together, having that time to check in about our days, right? Parents do care about you, right? They aren't just the fun police or the fun monitor, but they do care about you, want to make sure that you're good and want to see you win. So don't take for granted the opportunity that you have to spend with your parents, to spend with your siblings, even if they get on your nerves, because I know they do sometimes, right? But you won't get that time back, right? And you never want to have anything bad happen and you regret the fact that you didn't value or appreciate your time with your family. So definitely, I know there's times where you'd rather be with your friends, but make sure that you also spend time with your family, because at the end of the day, they're going to have you and have your back like nobody else can. So definitely value your parents, value your siblings, value your family, and make sure that you make some time for them as well.
And now, like out of college, just realizing that having a relationship, having the ability to communicate with parents is so important, because they're always going to be there as you journey through life in high school, middle school, high school, after high school. All of this is a maturing process of you becoming you, and the only people that are always going to be there and always, no matter what, be able to be there to communicate, talk through, and support and love you are those parents. And so, yeah, it may not be cool to spend time with them. At the time, you think it's not cool, or maybe maybe even hard to build the relationship when when you're just going through your teenage years, and that's somewhat understandable. But so many things need to be built that you want to have good, strong foundation of your relationship, and so you do want to cherish those moments, because as you continue on as growing up, you'll find that you'll come back, and those tie you down and keep you for sure cemented in who you can be and who you want to become. So definitely, you need to have quality. It doesn't have to be a bunch of time, but just having those roots, which are built through different experiences and time, and being real and open. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you just have to have trust between you and your parents, and you can only do that through communication and experiences.
So really like investing and being intentional in how you spend time with your children, and children as well. You get to be intentional, right? You get to really pursue that relationship with your parents. And here's the thing that I'm going to say. If you have healthy relationships with your parents, it will overflow into other relationships that you have in your life, right? There's a quote, I don't know where it's from, but there's a quote that says, charity begins at home, right? And so a lot of times what we're learning in the home is what we take with us into the world. And so if you are learning healthy relationships, you're learning how to have boundaries, you're learning how to be intentional, you're learning how to be disciplined, you're learning I don't know, like how to express your feelings and how to express your emotions in a manner that's healthy, then that's actually going to overflow into the rest of your life. Yeah. So that's my take on quality time. Again, spend as much time as possible with your family, spend as much time as possible with your parents. Then I also think parents, I think it's also good, maybe to give your children a little bit of space, and let them, invest in other relationships too, relationships with their siblings, relationships with their friends, and relationships with themselves. So I think it's also very healthy for our youth to spend time alone, to have some alone time and be well-rounded beings.
There was a position. They were the parents. They're obviously in charge. There are general rules to follow that are pretty much don't break the law. And from that point, we have certain house policies of you're going to help and you're going to work for what you get. And that is your own choice, whether you want to do that or not. And then you're just going to have to face the consequences of those actions. So that came into play also when we were getting jobs. The incentive for getting a job in my family was you get a job and then you get your own money to spend. And you can do that however you want, and you can spend your money on what you want. And so if you want, in my sister's case, it was often on clothes. My brother really wanted a new motorcycle. And so they got jobs and they could then buy those things. I tended to spend my money when I went out with my friends and different trips that we were taking and stuff. And I really think that in general, it just instilled in me and my siblings a sense of just responsibility for you taking care of the things that you do and not just to follow the rules. You get to think about why you want to have a job and what you're working for and why you want to do it. So I found that to be really positive.
But I think that it was just a different environment. Like, I think it was a good thing to have a job because it was just a vastly different environment than like school or sports practice or like the music stuff I was involved in. Like, a job is a different version of responsibility that has a little bit higher stakes involved, or at least it seemed like it did when I was younger. And I think it taught me, it taught me how to like speak up for myself or how to be like a little bit more independent, because like if I like was sick and couldn't go to work, like my mom's not gonna call my boss. Like I have to call my boss and be like, I'm sick, I can't come to work. So I think there were ways that like I kind of had to, take some responsibility for myself.
Okay, for me, I did not have a cell phone until like when I was 14, I think. I don't remember. probably when I was in 8th grade.
So, cell phone usage. I know that a lot of parents have concerns about cell phones, right? And whether they should monitor their kids' cell phones. You know, youth, you're probably wondering, why are my parents tripping about my phone, right? If your grades aren't right, your phone is probably the first thing that they probably take away. And so just to think about cell phones in a different way, or kind of open up the perspectives. I know, my parents, I got a cell phone when I was in 7th grade. And part of that was really for communication, right? So I was in middle school, I was involved in sports and things like that, like I mentioned before. And basically, my parents wanted to know, was I done with practice? Did I have to stay late? Those types of things. I think it's important to understand why youth are attracted to social media, especially because, it gives you an access of community, right? Community that you might not have access to ordinarily, people that don't live around you, you can connect with, right? You can be connected with people across the world. You can see different things. You can have access to different information, especially if you are in a space where you might have some type of marginalized identity and there's not a lot of people that look like you or identify in the same way that you do. You have access to other groups of people who can understand your experience and those types of things. So youth really gravitate towards social media for that reason. There's probably other reasons too, but I think that the community aspect is super key for youth. But for parents, I also understand why they probably have concerns about social media, especially because they tend to look at the negatives of social media. And while it does have positives, right, there are lots of negatives that we do need to recognize and address as well. Some of that being the fact that there's a lot of cyberbullying that happens on social media, where people are spreading hateful things about people. There's a lot of, it can trigger body dysmorphia, right, in the sense that folks are being exposed to this false image of how people are living and how people look and are trying to strive for that. It also can trigger anxiety and depression in youth, right? And increased suicides. And that's something that, I don't know if we really talk about as much as we should, but the fact of the matter is that social media does impact people in a lot of different ways, and it can be negative, right? It can cause this sense of, I'm not enough, I, am lacking in this way and things like that. And so I think parents' concerns is about, what are you putting out there? What are you being exposed to? What types of things are you interested in, right? And that you're not maybe communicating and things like that. Who's communicating with you? And so those are very valid concerns. I do want to recognize that.
I think the real shift for me was that my parents prioritized and cultivated those other interests, and so I didn't always feel the need to just kind of be attached to my phone, and I wanted to do other things. So instead of taking something away, instead of limiting my phone usage, they just encouraged other activities, and I limited that usage on my own because I had other things that I wanted to do. But yeah, I mean, my parents also took my phone away a billion times. So I the oversight part is tough because while as a high schooler, I felt like I was grown, I wasn't. And so there were ways my parents had to step in sometimes that were annoying and I hated them, but not my parents. I hated the rules. But yeah, I understand them now as just they were keeping me safe. They cared about me. It was important. They had to do it. So, okay, bye.
I'm gonna start with the first point, and that is talking about restrictions and boundaries. I feel like first to acknowledge, I just think that we have to acknowledge as kids that the Lord has blessed our parents with us. And I know we all know that, but that is the base of why our parents interact with us and have things in place with us. It's if you were gifted a pet, or if you were gifted anything really, if you were gifted a plant, let's say, you wouldn't not water it.
And you wouldn't, if you know that if you put it in the sun for too long and it will die, you wouldn't leave it in the sun. You would do whatever you could to make sure that it survives, it's protected, and it thrives. And I feel like it's just, that's the simplest way. Like, the Lord has blessed us. Literally, we are the seeds the Lord has watered and created, and we have been manifested through our parents. So I feel like that in itself is really humbling. And I feel like the biggest thing I'm gonna try to communicate for both teens and parents and caretakers is just being humble. Looking back on myself and in my teen years and still now, the one takeaway and perspective that I've gotten is that my life would have been so different. The interactions I had between my parents and I would have looked so differently. I would have avoided a lot of pain, avoided a lot of interactions that were unpleasant, a lot of decisions if I simply took a much humbler stance in my interactions and in my decisions and my words. So I'm going to read a scripture really quick just to start off. I've been reading through Proverbs, and I think it's so timely because as children, we desire to be wise. Like, we want to be smart. We want to know best. And as parents, that's ultimately what they want to give to us as children too. The scriptures say, like, wise children make parents so pleased, make them overjoyed. Like, I'm going to read from Proverbs 23, verse 24. The father of a righteous man has great joy. He who has a wise son delights in him. May your father and mother be glad. May she who gave you birth rejoice. My son, give me your heart, and let your eyes keep to my ways. And that was 24 through 26. I just feel like is such a good scripture to reference. We are the joy, like us as the body of Christ, are the joy to our Father in heaven, and it's the same representation of the unconditional love that the Father has for us is also what our parents were designed to give us. So I just feel like coming from that place of I'm gonna humble myself to honor my parents, it will do you, it's harder done than said, but it's such a beneficial tool, I think, throughout your life, and especially through your teen years, which I will say are definitely the hardest of growing up. And boundaries are put in place. Your parents know you more than anyone possibly could, and that's why they're putting these things in place. I can't really say anything that I'm sure you probably already haven't heard by your parents or by other people. So I'm going to kind of focus more on the parents' perspective in setting boundaries, because I think boundaries are so crucial. I would say boundaries rather than restrictions, because restrictions can just feel so restrictive. For the child, it doesn't feel like I have a say. So in creating boundaries, that's something that you can be just extremely transparent, and the parent and child can work together to be able to create decisions about do's and don'ts, reasons as to why we've chose to have these things in place and why we're doing this, and have it all be based off of the word, because the word is truth and it will protect us. And us as children also can't deny the word, because if we both just have that simple base of understanding that is what we're following, and these boundaries are based off of the word, it's the greatest protection that we can have. And also from doing that, I think that it's far more, it comes once again from that humble state as a parent, submitting under God's authority, even over my child, as me as a parent and over my child, because my child is not mine to protect and mine alone. The Lord has blessed me with this child and has equipped me to protect my child. But the Lord is the one that has the overall say, has the hand on my child's life. Like, my child's supreme parent is also my parent, and that is the Lord.